This podcast is recorded on stolen and unceded Aboriginal land.
We acknowledge the First Nations and elders of this country and join their calls for justice. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land.
Today marks 6 months since I was sworn in as a Greens member for Western Metro. As the first Vietnamese Australian woman to be sworn into any Victorian Parliament, what a privilege this is. When you start at any workplace, it takes you a while to get your bearings. Even harder when the workplace is steeped in elitist traditions of colonial times and predominantly white and male. Across the floor, they've heckled us as we get on with the work. In no other workplace could you behave in such a way and expect to keep your job. We are the political arm of progressive movements here and worldwide, true to the promise of a truly democratic and compassionate politics. We are a party room of 7 women of 8 members, being public school teachers speaking on education, a forest activist holding the government to account on logging, former community and social workers speaking on women's issues, gambling harm and housing issues. The diversity of representation is possible because our grassroots politics is working and our members made space for us to each enter this place. To everyone who is yet to see themselves reflected in this place out there, we are here, we see you, and we are making space for you. I'm more determined than ever to do good work in this place and keep our democracy working for all Victorians.
Have to kick off with the classic bonus candidate episode from Serious Danger, podcast about green politics in Australia. Not an official Greens Party podcast, produced by Michael the Griff Griffin, and our bonus candidate episodes are checking in with candidates across the country who are running for the Greens in the 2025 election. And this week we are in Melbourne's inner west in the seat of Fraser, which is where a very special little boy lives, isn't it, Tom?
That's me. This is
That's
my
your
neighbourhood.
seat. And we are meeting Greens candidate Huong Truong.
Hi,
Hello.
Hong.
How are you going?
Hello, Tom and Emeralds. Good to be here.
It's very
Great to have you
exciting
on.
to have you here.
Yes, particularly as this directly affects me. This is great.
Yeah. Do you volunteer? Have you been helping Tom with your local campaign, or
I've been doing stuff.
have you been slack?
Let's call Tom out now.
Call Tom
Oh,
out. Yeah.
Tom's been
Jesus
essential. What are you
Christ.
talking about? Having Tom on our side, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
And we'll have a
There you
force for
go.
change.
All right.
I mean, mainly, let's be honest, it's mainly been podcasting based. But there was an art auction last week. I went along and I bid on some art and I was outbidded
Oh.
by someone. I bought this. There was a lovely painting. All these amazing artists in the local area donated their work. You bid on them. All the money goes towards Huong's campaign. They were fantastic art. It was a really great night. And I bid for this beautiful painting of a honey eater because I thought my mum's going to love that. But I was outbid at the last minute by
Wow.
some evil person.
Wealthy.
So congrats
Also,
to them,
did I
guess.
just say your name completely wrong? Is it Huong?
Everyone says it's wrong because it's Vietnamese
Yeah,
and you're
fair.
speaking English. Yeah, but I answer to a lot of versions of it, but Huong Truong is fine.
Huong Truong. Yeah, okay. So I was like, Huong?
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, let's give it a go.
Thank you for being nice to white people, Huong. We appreciate that. That's
Very
nice.
nice. Yeah.
Well, why I'm called Huong is because back in kinder, lots of Viet kids were in my kinder class and the kinder teachers would just pronounce it however they pronounced it and you were stuck with it for life.
Oh,
That's just how
God.
it works. Yeah.
That's just how it goes.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
So
how it
that's not
works. God
necessarily
bless
how
you.
your family pronounces it, though.
Oh, no. No.
Okay.
How should we pronounce your name, I suppose? What's the correct
if you
way?
wanted to give it a go, you can say Huong.
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 Oh, nice. That's it.
Okay. That was very, very kind of you to react so positively to that.
We're laughing and learning.
Okay. Look. So, all right. Can you give us a quick rundown, just briefly, about yourself, who you are, your politics, how you came to have them?
Yeah, cool.
What's the story?
The story is it's funny because I don't move around the world thinking of myself as the daughter of Vietnamese boat people, like refugees, until I need, to kind of be a public person. And I realize how critical it is to my identity. So my parents met in Hong Kong at a refugee camp and then came to Melbourne, and I'm their eldest. So I was born here. And then we've lived in the West all my life. And because there was great services for refugees, public health, public education, no temporary protection visas. So we were, able to be looked after by all the services that are available to Australians. We were able to thrive. And so I grew up in the West before it was cool.
Yes, this is what because my boyfriend's from is Footscray in Fraser. Is that where you?
Yeah, out of town. That's where
Yeah,
Tom
that's my
is.
boyfriend's
Yeah,
from.
of course it is.
And he's always like, yeah, but now it's just full of gentrifiers like Tom, of course.
No. See, I think that's the story. But if you go to Footscray Nicholson Street Mall, Tom will attest to this. The tension's there, right? There's like the anti-gentrification of the community. Like there's a real vibe of that. Yeah, it's just a really real place.
It's really caught between the middle, right? Because obviously, heaps of people getting priced out of the city in Melbourne. They're being pushed out to the west, and it's a lovely place to live. I'm not saying this is a terrible circumstances, but yeah, the western suburbs of Melbourne, I believe, is the fastest growing part of Australia in terms of like population and infrastructure really struggling to keep up. But yes, all the Melbourne's west, traditionally Labor stronghold forever and ever and ever, very Labor seats. But that is really starting to change. We're getting more and more Greens elected to local council. In the state election, the seat of Footscray almost went to the Greens. And now we're in the seat of Fraser. We're talking about, suburbs like Footscray, West Footscray, around this kind of, inner west, just west of the Maribyrnong River, where, that's really changing. And people like Huong are a big part of that change. So, yes, there's a little bit of background. Of course, you're an organiser. Huong's very famous as a gun organiser when it comes to union rights. You've worked for unions before. You've worked in anti-racism organising as well. And you were briefly in the Victorian State Parliament. Can you tell us a little bit about your brief time there? What did you learn?
Yeah.
How did that come about? What was that vibe like?
If you can imagine, I was 33 years old. I had 2 young kids, and I got pre-selected to become the MP for Western Metro, Upper House MP, because our incumbent was retiring. And so I had to run through the final 8 months of an election trying to learn how to be an MP and also how Greens run upper house campaigns. And if, you politics nerds would know that the Greens, I think in terms of upper house campaigns, we're kind of getting a grasp of it now. But back in the day, it was just like you were trying to run lower house tactics in an upper house campaign. So it was a really steep learning curve, but it was incredible. And then we were, there were 16 micro parties stacked against us in that upper house seat.
16. Wow.
16 micro parties is out of nowhere. You get 500 people, random people to sign up and you're a political party. And so, I wasn't successful then. But, having been inside the parliament, like I was with Lydia Thorpe, I was with Samantha Ratner, some of like the coolest, realest people. But the rest of the chamber, it just, in both houses, it just felt a lot of posturing and, a lot of what you really hate about politics and tunes people out. So I thought, I've got to do some real shit. Oh my God, am I last fair? And so I thought, well, I've been a unionist all my life. I'm going to go and try my hand at organising. And I had some socialist friends in the National Union Workers and got trained up by some really, really incredible people. Yeah, and went out to chicken factories as a vegan to organise.
That's fun.
Hell yeah.
Oh, wait. Well, the chooks were treated better than the people in some of the places for sure. So
interesting.
Steep learning curve. And I brought all of that back into the Greens, that kind of organising ethic and everything I learned.
Well, this is so cool because, Huong, you're a fucking legend. You care so much. You work you put everything you've got into your campaigns and organising within the Greens. And I hope this doesn't come across as sort of any kind of cynical tokenism, but the critiques that we could make about the Greens broadly as a party is that, a lack of engagement with class politics and an overwhelmingly, white and comfortable demographic that makes up, say, the Victorian Greens. It seems like you're a really exciting answer that kind of blows that up. And I know you're really conscious of those issues about changing the party, about opening it up and getting more and more people involved and making it a mass party. Is that fair to say?
Yes, Tom, 100%. Yeah. So the way that I would tell that story about the Greens is I would just find an excuse to segue into this. So thank you, Tom. Like Labor are class traders, straight up. You live in the West, you know this, right? The kind of candidates we get out here or MPs we get out here literally are like the last dregs of the people they can drag onto a ballot sheet. And some of them are quite despicable at the state level in particular. So, some of them were behind the red shirts rot. So no surprises here. And so if we're talking about the Greens, and I've been in the Greens for 20 years, I feel like structurally, on principle, but then in the way that we approach consensus decision-making and grassroots democracy, we are designed to be the party for diversity. We are designed to be the party of transformational justice, all this kind of stuff. Labor could never. Like, they just couldn't even imagine it in their wildest dreams. And I say this to people on the doors because most people on the doors in the West, we've been door knocking, over 21,000 doors we've knocked on, thousands and thousands of conversations. They kind of get to a point where they're like, oh yeah, I'm so sick of Labor. But then what our job is to kind of like finish that sentence for them. Well, what's going to change? What do we need? And I think the thing that I add to the fact that everybody already understands corporate interests have just captured Australian politics, particularly Labor, out here in the West. The other part of it is, well, Labor can't, even if it tried to, do what's right by us because, aside from the fact that they're a rotating door between them and mining companies and gambling industry and all that kind of crap, they're factional machines. So they're designed to serve the interests of their factions. So if they're going to pre-select candidates or do policy or whatever, they've already kind of split it up between themselves. And so if you've become a Labor MP in a safe Labor seat out in the West, it isn't because you've had to really earn the trust of the community. It isn't because really, really, like by lived experience, how bad the hospital systems are, how public education and, how bad the roads are or whatever. It's because you've done your time in the party.
Earned it, quote unquote.
Right. Yeah. This mentality, yeah? And, maybe you played golf with the right person and you ended up in a faction. Like, they flip-flop between right and left factions. Like, why they have a right faction, I don't even know. But there's no ideological kind of or deep political philosophy that they're following. It's literally this game that they're playing for politics, which, for everyday people, it's like power for the sake of what? And it's because we're so far removed from that factional machine. So they could never. And so, like, returning to your point there, Tom, about, how we transform the Greens, I think as an organiser, I'm always looking out for who people turn up for. And I'm always thinking about the excitement and the possibilities of the people we haven't met yet as Greens. And this campaign has been a really critical example of that because we go and we meet people. And I could give a couple of examples. I've met through my Palestinian solidarity work. We Vote for Palestine across New South Wales and Victoria, organised all the solidarity groups doing that. I've met and kind of understood and grown into new ideas new to me about what it's like to move in the world, in Australia, as a Muslim hijabi woman, for example. And that's something that's like, big P politics feels is completely irrelevant. But without that understanding or that curiosity about, okay, what is it like to be a person of faith? I don't follow in a religion. What is it like to have a particular version of feminism or, being a good person as a Muslim hijabi woman? And then, and who did they turn up for? Like, if you know anything about the Palestine solidarity movement in Australia, Muslim Australians are so about solidarity Palestine. Like, not a heartbeat between it. And so, I feel like because Labor's factional machine, they each kind of jealously hoard power and they divvy up seats and, it's about the relationships within the party. They got no chance of doing this transformational kind of grassroots, deep organising. And also they're not prepared to change and as a party to account, like Fatima Payman had to leave the party to say what she needed to say and do.
Is a rat, of course.
And then be treated like a rat. Okay, that's something that I learned about the unions. I was like, they are harsh. They are harsh with like, you're either inside the union or you're out. And like, I think there was some things that I feel like we could adapt as the Greens Party from unionising. And some stuff like, calling people a scab and like, I agree with making sure there's a contrast between the power you could build together versus the power that we, can't take advantage of as individuals.
I'm all for marginalising scabs and rats, but not for the crime of voting for a recognition of a Palestinian state, which is part of your party platform. I reckon that's probably probably fair enough.
Yeah.
That's kind of more important to me than being loyal to the big party. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to say the approach we've taken in Fraser is so grassroots and so open. And we ran a big fundraiser that had no alcohol and was halal and had breaks for prayer time because we'd learnt so much about how to include people in our politics. And so, I think part of it too has been really beautiful in seeing how our Fraser volunteers are so ready to adapt and open up the Greens to for participation of other people who we've only just met. So I think that's the beautiful thing. Labor could never, is what I'm saying.
The Labor brain cannot comprehend.
Yes, can't even. Labor can't even. This guy's Daniel Molino. He's the sitting Labor MP, okay, and he was, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Huong, so he's from the Victorian State Labor Party, from the right of the party, I believe was against things like euthanasia laws, got a bit of social conservatism going on, has a fancy economics degree from Harvard or something like this.
Something like that.
And definitely didn't live out west before he received this sweet, safe seat. So was basically parachuted in here. Is that all accurate?
I don't pay much attention to him and I don't even say his name. That bad? Is that
No.
real petty of me?
All right. Okay. Fine.
I'll leave him to Marisa. My understanding of him is that he was a councillor in the southeast and then was parachuted into a safe seat in East Gippsland, Upper House. So I was a Upper House MP same time as he was. And then, then parachuted into Fraser, a federal Upper House seat in West. And could have chosen to live in Fraser, but lives just outside of it, apparently.
Interesting.
Yeah. And he's I don't think he's a bad person or anything like that, but just quite what I hear from other people is that he's really uninspiring. That's what you get. Very shallow pool of talent in the Labor Party, as I said. And also really happy to toe the line with Labor. So you see his voting record, you're right, Tom. I think there's some pretty disgusting things against Palestine and climate and stuff. Yeah. So, just bland Anne, I guess.
Who is he? He's a Labor MP.
Yes.
Yeah. Literally.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
He's filling that quota.
I couldn't tell you for all the time that I've known him who he turns up for. Who he's going to stick his neck out for, what is he fighting for. I think the best that I've heard from community is that he turns up to events. I was like, I can do that.
Yeah. There's also the basic requirement of any. I guess I'm sure there are MPs who don't do that, but I'm like, well,
I know, which is also disgusting.
Not even clearing the very low bar we set for that.
Well, this is it. What happens when you've been served by really lackluster, uninspiring MPs is people's imagination. They get tuned out of politics, as you can imagine, so many people, and then that's our task, is to bring them back into believing that it's possible to have transformative politics. But our expectations are lowered. We get to a point where we don't even expect much. We don't even ask for stuff, because we're just like, oh, that's what's going to change. Yeah.
Well, how much should we expect the Greens to win the seat of Fraser? Looking back at 2022, you've got Daniel Molino had a 8.7% swing against him. He's still on a primary of 42.1 in 2022. The Greens had a 4.7% swing to them. That's with our candidate, Bella Mitchell-Sears, who was a lovely young person who very kindly put her name up to be the Greens candidate.
Gorgeous.
But it would be fair to say that wasn't a massively active campaign, certainly wasn't seeing the kind of energy and investment that we're seeing with your campaign in 2025. So the primary is 18.5% there for the Greens, Libs on 24.7. Again, the Liberals don't really invest much and or run very hard when it comes out west. So I guess that's the kind of the stats. How are we going to do it? How are we going to win Fraser? How likely is it? How's it going to work? How are you going to deal with the presence of, say, the Victorian Socialists, which have also seen a bit of growth in the West recently? Tell us about that.
I love that the Vic Socialists are gone like bananas out here. It's so amazing. And I think it also is a great way for us to check our radical politics as Greens as well. Yeah, I think some of the socialists are really good friends of mine. They're incredible people, really grassroots. So, I think that only will help us, because I don't imagine they'd preference Labor or Liberal above us.
Sure.
But in terms of how we're going to win, God, Tom, I don't know. It's really funny. There's some really great young folks in the Fraser campaign who are all about this psephology, and I just leave it to them. And then we've got obviously Janet freaking Rice, right? Former senator, founder of the Greens, just absolute stalwart of party, backing us in every step of the way. So I leave it to them to take the candidate fever for me. But but the story, I feel like the story in Fraser, and I'm really, really wanting to, I'll be insufferable after the election because I won't be as busy and I'll be talking about this all the time, is that our Fraser campaign is closer to most of the other, in terms of circumstance and politics and psephology, closer to almost every electorate than the winnable, kind of super winnable target seats like Mac and Wills. So we've had to scrap together a team of volunteers, and they started a year out when Max called on the country to do door knocks for the HAF campaign. And these young folks, and this was before I kind of jerried that Fraser was even a thing, started door knocking and started thinking, oh my gosh, there are working class people here who are so ready to hear what we're about in terms of housing, and we were able to articulate that so well. So that was October 2023, which is also around when the hostilities of Israel just really ratcheted up. And so, they began door knocking every weekend, just leaning on the state office for systems and other support, but it was proper grassroots in the electorate where we live, in our communities where we live. And come July last year, we opened pre-selection. A lot of the other campaigns in the Greens, they've had like a couple of election cycles to build up this kind of knowledge around, how you run a campaign night, or how you run door knocks and put systems and logistics around it and train up your volunteers, all this kind of stuff. We did that all from scratch, obviously using a lot of the materials and things like that. But when you have people who are doing it for the first time running election campaigns, we just don't know what success look like. So it's real hard graft doing it for the first time. And we just keep exceeding our own expectations. And I think that's the really incredible story that I want to share with any, Greens out in the outer suburbs of our major cities or in the rural regional areas, that if you're the only Greens in the village, you probably only need another like 2 or 3 people, and you can start really prosecuting a case in the community about politics being different. And so we've done things like raised $140,000 in September, which is unheard of. I think the most we'd ever raised before that was $50,000 in 2018 when I was an MP. And, we're door knocking every weekend, as I said, for over a year. And we're just growing more and more confident as we know that community are really ready to join us and really getting the solidarity message that we're pushing as well.
I mean, the same indicators that we've got in that in Brisbane, right, are there. It's like we've increased our presence on local council out west and Maribyrnong in the recent local council elections. Again, as I mentioned, the seat of Footscray in the state election was pretty goddamn close to going green in 2022. So those same kind of, the general presence and the reality of the Greens being a real presence in the West and not going anywhere, the same thing
100%.
replicating in Brisbane are definitely there.
Yeah, I also think that there's something of an advantage in doing it, as you say, from scratch, having new blood, people who aren't necessarily bogged down in what you can get bogged down in if you've been doing, 2, 3, 4 election cycles of this is the way that we always do it, and so this is the way that we'll do it, coming at it from a fresh perspective and going, actually, how do we want to approach this as a new, burgeoning kind of little grassroots movement that is, I think, how you win. And as Tom says, it's similar to what happened in Brisbane. I think that it was new people who came in with fresh eyes and were like, hey, I want to try this stuff and have a crack. And there's that perspective that the campaign can be really exciting. It can be really exciting for the team. And it's also when you are breaking new ground and talking to people who've never really heard this kind of politics before, certainly haven't heard really of what the Greens are about. That is also so exciting. So I think that's it. It can be an advantage in a way.
I reckon too, that political imagination that we want to bring from the grassroots. And there is, you've just absolutely nailed it, Emerald. There's a Fraser way of doing things that's evolved. And we're like, state office is saying that we might not be able to do that. But what if we could?
What if we just tried? Yeah.
Why don't we just give it a go?
I love that.
And the fail fast, and it feels like a startup. It feels like, let's just give it a crack,
Yeah.
But on the other side of it too, there's things that we're doing, like we feed all our volunteers. That's something that the young ones that started, talking Matt Mayer, Kira Fraser, John Boddicker, when they started door knocking and having campaign nights, they're like, we want to feed everybody. And so there was this ethic of community care and mutual aid that was so core to it, and it's just grown and become a part of the Fraser way of doing things. But also, I know we're successful because the community groups, like we started with folks like Colleen and Janet and myself who've got connections across the West, and so we're building on those relationships. But what is really magical about it now is that people are coming to us. Like, we're not elected. We don't have an office of 6 staff and office budget of $100,000, but people are coming to us and they're saying, hey, we think this like 485 visa is really unfair to international students. Who can we talk to in the Greens that can help us elevate this to select them? Cool, let's go. We're really committed to community languages being taught in public education in a way that helps us access like cultural knowledge and critical thinking that having multiple language allows. Oh, cool. Well, this is how the Greens are developing their state policy, and this is our process, and this is how you can make a pitch for it. And why don't you become a member? All these really beautiful examples of we're giving people a sense of how the Greens are an extension of the work they're doing at the grassroots. And the beautiful thing too is with the Power and Community dinner that I was talking about before, the fundraiser, where we had 200 people, over 200 people from different multicultural groups, multi-faith groups, grassroots groups that were doing, rescuing trafficked women, to bring them into their own homes, or, rounding up Tibetan youth in Australia to do really, really pithy political advocacy. They're always these handful of people who, on top of their full-time jobs, caring for kids and elders, all this kind of stuff, also running these little charities or programs or mutual aid for new Palestinian refugees. And we got them all in a room and they saw each other. It's like, oh, you turn up for more than your bank account or your white picket fence, and you're still working hard, and we see you, we see each other. I think that's the role that I know if we're talking about, what we're winning in Fraser. I think what we're winning on in terms of learning on behalf of the Greens movement, how we can have a really expansive idea of what politics looks like and inspire all these people who are already doing incredible work to feel like the Greens are an extension of them, and that like they can come up to me, who's like, just a candidate at the moment, and then after May won't be a candidate, just a regular person.
You'll be an MP.
Well, you'll be the MP, of course.
Yeah, true. Sorry. My team would kick my ass for talking like that. That I like, whatever my position is afterwards, like Huong will know, Huong will care, Huong will find someone. Like, we see a need, we find a way. And we're going to do that together as a community. And my pitch to our membership is I do it as an out Greens. I do it as a Greens. Like, like Max at the flood sandbagging thing, having all these people in Greens t-shirt. Just don't be shy about telling people we're Greens and we do cool shit,
Yeah.
We're Greens and we care about things and we'll help you. Like, that's us.
There's enough people working very hard to make us feel ashamed to be Greens, so fuck those people. Let's just own it. Yeah. Well, I'm so excited about your candidacy. I think you're just an absolute gun. I'd love to see you in Parliament, and I think we'd be very lucky to have you. If you want to help elect Huong, please do so. If you're in the western suburbs of Melbourne, Huong for Fraser, you can sign up. We'll put all these links in the show notes of this episode. Sign up to volunteer. There's campaign nights every Wednesday night at Borderlands Cooperative in Footscray. Door knocks happening every weekend. You can put a placard out on your front fence or wherever you can display it prominently. That would be great. We want placard domination, it says here, according to Huong.
We do. We want, like, anybody who walks into a booth is not going to be like, oh, I wonder who's running for the Greens. They'll be like,
they're going to know.
That's the lady from the fence.
That's right.
I'm going to vote for the fence lady. Thanks for talking to us on the show, Huong. And yes, solidarity and good luck to you. We're barracking for you, man.
Thank you, Bo.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Serious danger to Australia.